What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. My name's Micah, and today we're gonna change the oil on our Indian FTR 1200. This is a very easy process, and I'm gonna walk you through it start to finish, all the tools that you need, the kind of oil you'll want to use, as well as filter. And this is gonna be the first service on our motorcycle. So our bike has 500 miles on it now, so I'm gonna walk you through all the different things that Indian wants you to check, inspect, and possibly adjust for your first service. And pretty much all these other things that I show you to check, inspect, possibly adjust, Indian has you checking and adjusting those at every different service interval. So 5,000, 10,000. So regardless of what mileage your bike is at, this video should be fairly helpful. And without further ado, let's rip into it. So now the very first thing that we're gonna do is start our motorcycle and let it run for about 3 minutes here. So now I'm sitting on the left side of our bike. The front of our bike is facing that way. So right behind the kickstand here, you're gonna find two different oil drain plugs. Yes, two. The first one's gonna be right here. The second one will be here. So we're gonna take each of those out. They use a 6mm hex key. There is a washer on each of those studs, so don't lose that. So we'll get our oil pan under here and drain all that oil out. All right, so about all the oil is drained, so now we can take our filter off. It's just gonna be right in front of those drain bolts. I'll show you here. So our drain bolts are back there, just dripping out. Right here in front is gonna be our oil filter. Now you could probably use a bunch of different tools to get that off. I'm just gonna use a classic oil filter wrench. So this is gonna be a 14 flute oil filter wrench for a 3/8 drive. Now, as far as the oil, the filter, what I'm using today and what I would recommend is just gonna be the Indian oil change kit for your FTR. So this kit comes with all the oil you need and more. You know, we're probably gonna add just 3 quarts of oil to our bike, maybe a smidge more. So it comes with 4 quarts there. You do get 2 new washers for those drain plugs, and then you do get a new Polaris oil filter for your bike as well. Now, one of the main reasons I went with this kit from Indian is because the oil type that this motorcycle takes is fairly unique. So your FTR 1200 is gonna require full synthetic 15W60 motorcycle oil. I don't think I've ever even seen 15W60 motorcycle oil on the shelf at any local parts store. And with this being an Indian, not like a Honda or something, it's probably gonna be pretty picky about the type of oil it wants. You know, those Japanese bikes, half the time you just put canola oil in them, call it good. But this kit has everything you need. It's nice that it has the washers as well. You know, this kit is available on Amazon, so when I ordered it, I think it showed up on my door 1 or 2 days later here. The kit is $90, and I'll put the link in the description below. You might be thinking, $90, wow, that's pretty expensive for an oil change kit on a motorcycle. And yeah, it is a little bit higher, but I don't really mind for 2 different reasons. One, that it has the oil that is just so odd, that 15W60, and then that it comes with the factory OEM Polaris filter, you know, your new washers and stuff. And the thing about these FTR 1200s is that your oil change interval is every 10,000 miles. So it's not like some of your bikes where you're changing the oil every 2,500, 3,500 miles. So once you factor in the miles you can go, that 10,000, you know, divided by the $90 cost, it's actually pretty reasonable. So now we're gonna install our new oil filter. What you'll wanna do is just take some oil and kind of lube up that rubber ring, that rubber gasket around the top of the filter there. It'll help it make a really good seal. So now that we've done that, we can just spin this on. And then always take a rag and kind of clean up that surface that the oil filter goes on. Make sure there's no dirt or debris, anything like that on there. Now, as far as the torque spec on this, you don't get a torque spec for the filter in your owner's manual. What Indian says is just get it as tight as you can with your hand and then put some sort of an oil filter wrench on it and turn it 3/4 of a turn more. So I've got it nice and firm with my hand. So now I'm gonna take my oil filter wrench here and we'll just do that 3/4 of a turn. That looks good to me. So now we can go about putting our drain plugs back in. So we'll bust out our brand new washers here. so that we can put one of those on each of our plugs. And then you'll want to take a rag, clean up the surface around those drain plugs as well. We need those to make a good seal. And then 15 foot-pounds is going to be the torque spec for these drain bolts. Well, and that feels really good. So now I'll just kind of wipe off under the bike, get any excess little oil drips off of there. So now let's put some fresh oil in our motorcycle. So when filling the motorcycle up, we're just gonna start with 3 quarts. We're gonna see how far that gets us. Then we'll check our oil in the little sight glass here. We'll see what the level's at, and then we'll decide if we need to add more or not. Now, what Indian Motorcycle says about the oil capacity of this bike is something about like this. Well, if you're just doing an oil change, it should just be 3 quarts is all you need. Well, now if it were plumb dry, you'll need about 4.5, maybe more. But just for an oil change, 3 should be fine. Well, if you switch out the filter, it might take a little more. And in all reality, it might be 3.5, but it should be 3 right on the dot. I mean, at the end of the day, every motorcycle is different. You know, you're just gonna have to figure it out. Really? Really, Indian? That's our oil capacity spec? So anyways, yeah, you'll see numbers that are all over the board, whether you're reading online or reading in your owner's manual. You'll be just as confused if you read the owner's manual trying to figure out how much oil your bike takes. So anyways, we're gonna start with 3 and go from there. Now, and on that oil filler cap, always make sure that you check that little rubber ring on there. Make sure it's not ripped, torn, jeopardized in any way. Ours is certainly fine. We're gonna start our motorcycle here with the way the lubrication system is on these. You'll wanna check the oil level as your bike is at operating temperature. So we're gonna let our bike run for just a few minutes here, then we'll turn it off. We'll tip it up perfectly straight vertical and we'll look at that sight glass and see where we're at. All right, so we let our motorcycle run for a little bit. I added an extra 1/2 quart, you know, from that 4th quart of oil. So we're sitting at about 3.5 quarts total. And if you look down at our sight glass here, we're about right in the dead center of those 2 marks there. So I'm probably gonna add a little bit more oil from that 4th quart. We'll get our level up a little bit closer to that top mark, and then I think we're good to go. All right, so I ended up adding about 2/3 of that 4th quart here, and then that's got us to where we're about 3/4 of the way up on that sight glass. So we're gonna call that good today. But yeah, that oil capacity instructions in the owner's manual is so goofy. Well, let me just show you. So now looking at our owner's manual for the oil change, it says use a funnel, add 3 quarts to your Indian motorcycle, and it says 3 quarts will bring the engine oil level at or near the full mark on the sight glass. And then it says for new or rebuilt dry engines, add an additional 0.5 quarts, which would bring you up to 3.5 quarts, right? If your engine were completely brand new. But then just below that, it says total engine oil fill volume with oil filter change will be approximately 3 to 4 quarts. So what happened to the 3 quarts getting you to the full line, which I just read? Because then they said a dry engine would need just 1/2 quart more, but then down here they say for your oil change you may need 4 quarts. Oh, and then down here they say that for a new rebuilt or dry engine it'll be 4.5 quarts. So now do you see what I was saying, guys? I mean, that's just like the most vague, confusing instructions ever. But anyways, just over 3.5 quarts and you should be fine on your Indian FTR 1200. Now, outside of changing our oil, since this is our first service, in the owner's manual, it's gonna give you a list of different things to check, inspect, possibly adjust, and it will have these for every different mileage service interval that you come to. So the first one you can see is 500, then there's a 2,500 mile one, a 5,000 mile one, a 10,000 mile one. Now the next time we will change the oil on this bike, according to the manual, doesn't have to be till the 10,000 mile mark. And I would do 10,000 miles or 1 year's time, whatever you get to first. You know, if you changed your oil and only put 2,000 or 3,000 miles on your bike that year, I would still change your oil next year. You know, those oils have properties and additives to them that kind of break down over time. So we always want to make sure we have good oil, that our machine is functioning properly. So as far as the things that Indian wants me to check here for the initial service, It's really just like drive chain. I've already done that. We tightened our chain. Oil and filter change, we did that. Inspect the exhaust, make sure that's not loose. Once you inspect your different oil lines, check the battery, make sure it's not corroding or anything like that. Look at your brake pads, check your clutch lever, briefly check your fasteners and bolts, headlight, gear shift, rear brake pedal, passenger pegs, side stand. There's really nothing crazy in there for the first service. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I need to take my bike to the dealer for the first service. Well, you just don't, you know. I would just order this oil change kit yourself and just go through that checklist. That's in the owner's manual for you. It will tell you everything to look at, everything to check. These bikes are actually really easy to maintain, and it's something that anybody can do themselves. Well, and I think that's gonna wrap it up for today, guys. So like the video if this helped you out, subscribe if you guys want to see more. I'll put this oil change kit in the description, and until next time, have a wonderful night, guys.